Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. All right.
Mic check, mic check.
All right. Let's go ahead and just get this started.
Mic check.
So this
All right. Mic check, mic check.
all right. Let's go ahead and just get this started.
Mic check.
So this
All right. Mic check, mic check. All right. Let's go ahead and just
hold on a second.
get this started. Mic check.
So this
All right. Mic check, mic check. All right. Let's go ahead and just
boom. All right, good. Yo, what's up, God Energy? Peace, peace. I'm up here while that conversation was occurring, I was actually getting a presentation together. I do classes on Saturdays, and I was talking about the development of Kemet. But so that's what this is going to be for the first, couple minutes. Um, and then actually I'm starting to recognize like I may need to begin to talk about the development of a Black political theology. I don't really speak on that, and then um, people have sideways conversations related to certain positions. So I will eventually start talking about that because I focus more on spirituality because that's actually spirituality, theology, ideology, because that's the crux of the development of community. That's what I've seen. So I speak more on that than the actual philosophy that's guiding me. Um, which in truth, man, I'm losing my focus. I'm going on, but I'm gonna go ahead and do this quickly. It comes from the study of. Now I read this long ago. This is not the copy that I am referring to, but this is the book that I get my political analysis from, right? So eventually I'm gonna go back through this and then start to more fully develop a political theology based on it. But not even really like I have to. Other people have done that, but really start explaining, what it means to have a communalistic society that interacts um, intra dependently amongst ourselves, which is really critical for what we're going to have to do in this current time period that we're in relationship to the attack on the social systems that are in place for the betterment. Or anyway, man, let me get through this presentation. I'm tripping, but it's definitely something. If you're interested in coming up and speaking, we can definitely go on a tangent. It's all good. um But I'm gonna try to get through this presentation. It's just a really quick presentation that I promised some people that I'm working with that I would put together and put on my show. So, all right. This is called the Tashwanet mummy, right? This is Africa's oldest mummy, right? And then it was discovered in the modern area, what we know of as Libya, and it is 1,000, at least it shows that 1,000 years before Kemet, there was mummification going on, right? Or there was the preservation of the body, right? And so that's interesting in and of itself, right? And it was discovered in 1958 by this man named Fabrizio in Libya, right? Which is located in like the Central Sahara region, you see. And that'll be somewhere in this region. That'll be somewhere here in this region right here where you see the circle going on, right? And this is actually what I think occurred. I think Africans were preserving the body, right? I think this was a practice that happened, and this was occurring while there was in that Sahara region, while there was still water, while there was still life-giving resources in that region, and then the people migrated. Peace, peace. And then the people migrated, not even migrated, like the practice itself migrated, not the people, but the practice. Yeah.
That I have about Kemet being like a compilation of two African superclusters, one being this North African one, and then the other coming from South Africa, and then dividing what practices we see in Kemet that came from each group. And the mummy is one of the things that I associate with this supercluster at the top. The other being the worship of the jackal. So, and then I also put forth that the term Kente Amentu, for most of the Westerners, not only meant Westerners as in the afterworld, but I feel like it was a cultural nod and an acknowledgement of the cultural knowledge of this migration, literally from the West, for most of the Westerners. Ampu, and his worship coming from that area with mummification, which is why in Kemet, Ampu is associated with mummification because they both came into Kemet from this area, which is why Kenti Amentu, foremost of the Westerners, is not only theologically representative of the underworld, but also a cultural memory, a cultural nod to their ancestry literally in the West.
Okay, that's yeah, yeah. That could that's a good. I heard. Yeah, I remember you speaking on that a long time ago, and so I think that that has merit to it. You know what I'm saying? And then so yeah, I believe that has merit to it. I just want to let you know, just in case you may want to drop back down, I am live streaming on YouTube. Just in case you might want to drop back down. But you're welcome, of
Nah,
course.
no problem.
All right, you
No
know.
problem. I'm gonna let you mostly do this with me adding in minimally. You know what I mean? But I'm here to support, brother.
Appreciation. Yeah, this should be quick. It's a fairly it's not an in-depth, it's not as in-depth as I could go. It's put together quickly. But all right. So this was the remains of a young boy that was dated to be between, 55 and 56,000 years old, right? And then people were really amazed at how well it was preserved, and so the interesting thing was the child was placed in a fetal position, which was similar to later traditions, and it was wrapped in antelope skin, and he had an ostrich necklace. So, for some reason, and then understanding understanding our people, all of this is symbolic. The ostrich necklace, the fetal position, but what is it symbolic of, right? We don't necessarily know. We can just theorize on that, right? Uh Now the body, the organs of the body was removed, and then they found preservatives inside the body, which more than likely helped it to slow down the decomposition process, right? So we are already witnessing in the earlier times, we're witnessing, the Africans using herbology in order to, in order to preserve the mummy, in which we see a similar process occurring in Egypt. It's just that the difference is they didn't use certain elements. I'll get to that in a second, right? So they were nomads, and they lived in the Sahara when it was a green Sahara. And they mostly lived off of cattle herding, right? And then in the rock art that they have, it shows that, they had a cattle herding culture. They had a complex social system, right? So the interesting thing about this is for the majority of us, you know what I'm saying? We have not heard of this, right? And so this is going to challenge what we think about mummies, like just limiting certain practices to a certain geographical region. And that's really not the case. What we need to do is we need to open it up, we need to open our mind up to understanding these were African practices. If we can look at it as African practices, then what we see in Egypt is we can understand it was more like a cosmopolitan type of place. It was more like a convergence of different people coming together and creating a certain culture. And it's not even a monolithic culture. There was an idea that traveled through it, but then it still in and of itself had its variations, right? So looking at the similarities and the differences, right? Both civilizations took out the organs, right? And then preserved them, and then they had the wrapping of the body, right? So the Tashwanet did this with wrapping with the skins and leaves, and then they did not use natron, right? That's that the Egyptians used natron, right? Now the body was placed in a fetal position. Now I was thinking this is interesting, like because the fetal position is not only found in in uh in this has with the Tashwanet mummy, but you also in earlier Egyptian burial sites you find the Egyptians buried in the fetal position. So I'm wondering if they were making a connection between the birth being in the fetal position and your death being in the fetal position. Is there like a total connection that's going on there? That's what I think is occurring in their theology, right? So there's it shouldn't be surprising that people that make their living off of cattle venerate the cattle. It shouldn't be surprising that there's a veneration of the ancestors. Everybody for the most part honors the ancestors. You know what I'm saying? There's only one group that came along a lot later that really talked against honoring the ancestors, right? And so then this is talking about the desertification that occurred, right? About 5,000, 6,000, 5,000 plus years ago. Let me put it like that. There is an understanding that there was a slow desertification of the Sahara. The Green Sahara is turned into the Desert Sahara, right? And the reference to Green Sahara is meaning that at one point the Sahara Desert had life-giving properties, but eventually it dried up, and so civilization, our people, moved and dispersed from that area, not just in an eastward migration, but just in an expansive migration. They would have migrated south, they would have migrated east, they would have migrated north, they would have went to wherever they had food. What's up, God Energy?
Yeah, the African humid period, sometimes it's known as like the Aqualithic period of Africa. There were large lakes, Lake Megachad and others, and things like that, and waterways that crisscrossed from east to west, connecting these areas of Africa. So I completely agree with you, brother. I think it's dope that you're bringing light to the African humid period. Side note, it's the monsoons that they say that would reach less and less north in Africa, right? Creating the humidity to maintain the lushness. So they say because the monsoons wouldn't reach north as much as they would, this led to that desertification process.
Interesting, right? Because it's such a massive land mass that it would need to have water coming from other area in order to keep it up. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right, all right, all right. Boom, 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 boom. So the impact of this studies shows that there were and then as a matter of fact, there were practices of other nations that went into the development of what we know and what we glorify the world over as ancient Kemet, right? But we need to understand that Kemet was the culmination. It's not the start as much as it continued on traditions coming from other areas, other African cultures. And we'll see that in play when we look at this next discussion, which is the Nabta Playa, right? Nabta Playa is an area in southern Egypt, right? that existed in pre-dynastic times, and it also deals with the construction and the arrangement of stone monoliths, right? Huge stone structures laid out when in a particular way, stones laid out in a particular diagram. So that's this, these are not just random rocks nor dirt mounds, just put in there in place, and we have no understanding of what they is, what they're meant for, right? This is a particular stone structure meant to tell astronomical time. Like those of us today, like we take it for granted that that time, we have such easy access to time. It doesn't even sound deep that we know what day it is, that it's what today is, the February 16th. It's not deep that it's 6:14, right? But back in the day, to know that information, that was good. That was deep back then. Timekeeping is something that this ancient civilization was built on. And so Nabta Playa is a timekeeping space, right? And it aligns with the stars, right? And this was done in the seventh millennium. We're talking about 6,000 BC, right? And then it was around, it's not just by itself, but it was around villages, right? We see deep wells that was there. We see also there was pottery and the cattle herding, within this area of Nocta Playa, right? So already we can see the beginnings of are the foundations of what we know of ancient Egyptian civilization coming from other cultures, other areas around the Egyptian civilization that predated it, right? So it's not aliens. You know what I'm saying? It's not random Europeans coming in and giving us. We can see the development of these concepts, right? It's like looking at the development of the English language. We can watch it occur through stages. We're looking at the stages of civilizations that exist, peoples and civilizations that existed around Egypt that led to what we know of as its civilization, right? So once again, it's huge stone structures arranged in a particular way. And if we look at this line here, and then if you think about the temple as one of those temples in ancient Egypt that aligns directly up with the winter solstice. I can't say this in particular, but my theory is that this line here lines up. Actually, hmm. Let's see here. When we look at it, yeah, this straight line is for the solstices. And this cross line here, and this is it. This straight line is for the solstices, and this cross line is for the equinoxes. And these stones in the middle are to help tell you this is their fall, this is their winter, spring, and then summer. That's the outline of Nabta Playa. All right. Then we understand once again there was a cattle cult, just like there was the cattle cult, so to speak. I don't even know why they call it a cattle cult. Like they were making their living off of their food. They made their source of living. They made their food source sacred. Why? Also, why would they do that? So that it could be preserved, so that it's not disrespected. So calling it a cattle cult, all of that is very disrespectful. But they're saying that this would be the precursor to the Het Heru, spiritual practices, right? Now they know that it played, influenced Egypt's cultural and religious evolution, right? They understand that the cattle cult transformed into the Het Heru worship. Brother God Energy, go ahead. Or was that a while ago you raised your hand? I'm gonna keep going. Uh,
Hello?
all right, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, brother. Also like the shared ancestry of these sub-Saharan African pastoralists. is postulated why, especially being with the L3 haplogroup migration into India, morphing into the M subclade, right? This centralized theme around cattle is why the cow is venerated in India as well. The cow has a significant role in Sumer as well, right? El is known as the bull, right, in the Levant. And it's been put forth that the ancestry with these sub-Saharan African pastoralists is not only giving rise to exactly what you're documenting here with the later descendants in, Kush and Kemet with the Heru coat, but also the migrants out of Africa that was carrying this pastoralist tradition with them out of Africa, which is why we see cattle veneration in these ancient civilizations outside of Africa as well.
So we're talking about a cultural connection, cultural continuity.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Appreciate that, family. All right. So as my brother was saying earlier, so about 5,000 years ago, severe droughts, which we now got some clarification on, that which occurred because of which is theorized occurred because there was a lack of monsoons bringing water to the area, had these people migrate, right? So if you wanted to go see them, they're preserved in the Nubian Museum in Aswan to protect them from vandalism and environmental damage, right? All right. Dun, dun, dun. Let's let's look at this. All right. So I think all right. So there is a presence of planned village layouts with that. I think I already covered that. I already covered that. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Now we're going to talk about Sheikh Anta Diop's role in establishing that ancient Kemet was an African civilization, was a black civilization. All right. So there was a man named Elliot Smith who discovered skeletons with skin fragments. So skeletons that still had skin, mummies that still had skin on them, right? And then it was shown that it belonged to individuals that had melanated skin. Now, Professor Sheikh Anta Diop, Sheikh Anta Diop, however you like to say it, I say Diop, conducted laboratory studies on these mummies, right? And it showed that they were black, right? And that, and there's an understanding that for millions of years, there was only black people on this planet, right? And so white people are a recent emergence on this planet, and they'll even tell you that there's actually a study out saying that shows that the first people in Europe were Africans, right? And then I remember seeing that in Time magazine. And so they understand this. You understand? They understand this. It's just people have problems, understanding this as well. Now, there is this group of people, a tribal people that people call the Natufians that come from Palestine or that are found in Palestine as well, that had a well-established presence near Cairo, right? And then there's an understanding that the Natufian culture, or there was a Natufian influence, that with their stone tools that can be found here, right? And then there's also a similarity between the Natufian tool making that they're doing and then people in the Somalian region, right? Which is kind of which is like South Ethiopia, modern day South Ethiopia, right? And this is an image of what they theorized the Natufians, would have looked like, you know. So we can find there's something I was looking for the Natufian dental imagery or dental, they call it dental mutilation. I couldn't really find it, but so this is what I came up with right here. All right, brother, go ahead.
Yeah, peace, brother. The Natufians are actually a group that I use to kind of Africanize my conversation about Canaan, because I know we get into the aspect of the admixture in Canaan, people from the Caucasus making their way in Canaan and things like that. There's actually a battle, right, about the Semitic heritage and language being brought in by the J haplogroup versus the E haplogroup. And when you're talking about the E haplogroup, it is the Natufians here, right, that they make the case for bringing the E haplogroup and Proto-Semitic into the Levant. You know what I mean, around 9,500 BCE, in the work of Donald Redford in his book Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in ancient times. And I believe it was the anatomist. Let me just double check real quick. I believe it was the anatomist Sir Arthur Keith, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Sir Arthur Keith, Scottish anatomist and anthropologist, professor and conservator of the Hunterarium Museum of Anthropological Archaeology, gave the first authoritative account of the ethnic identity of the Israelites being originally Black African. This was stated at the Congress of Prehistoric Sciences and Osteological Analysis, gave scientific backing to his findings that they had classical West African features. And they attribute that African or those Africoid features of the Israelites to these Natufians here.
Interesting. What was that book called?
He stated this Congress, yeah, Black Africans. This was stated to the Congress of Prehistoric Sciences.
Hold on, let me write this down. Congress. And what's this person's name again?
Sir Arthur Keith. He was a Scottish anatomist and anthropologist.
That's EEFE. All right. Cool. Appreciate
KEIT, I believe.
KEIT. Appreciation, fam.
Yeah, no problem.
As a matter of fact, I'm gonna keep going straight, and then later on, after I'm done, I guess I'll look this up and we can review it. But let me get through this. All right. So Diop argued, Sheikh Anta Diop argued that anthropological studies should also include bone measurements and blood group analysis, right? He noted that the Upper Egyptians belong to a West African populations, which is which is group B, blood group B, which is different. Now we've come a long way since this time, but I just simply want to present Diop's arguments, right? Which was different than the blood group of Europeans, right? Now, Diop concluded that pre-dynastic Egypt was completely African, right? Now, my thing though, honestly, just to add my little 2 cents into it, I think this area here near Cairo, up top, I really think this area has always been a zone of confluence. That's what Sheikh Anta Diop refers to it in one of his books as the zone of confluence, right? I think this area that connects this of southern Egypt, northern where Cairo is, or northern Kemet now. I think this area has always been an area where the Mesopotamians were coming into the Kemetic civilization, right? Right, because this is a natural land bridge. And so this area experiencing droughts and then hunger and so on and so forth, I think the people have always been coming into this area. And that's why you have certain populations in this area, in this region, that are genetically different than the populations further south. So then that is my theory on that. And that seems to be what is backed up by history. Now, the Palermo stone, right? So Flinders Petrie found this, and he kind of theorizes that the Anu people, right, are Africans that helped to civilize, are some of the Africans that came in to help civilize or start the civilization of ancient Egypt, right? So there's this African person, Terra Neter, that is shown here to have African features, in his depiction, one devoted to God, right? And then also Sheikh Anta Diop talked about the crown of Narmer mimicking are looking like these Nubian, these Senegalese hairstyles, right? Look, now this is lookership scholarship, but there's something here because that's an interesting feature, right? And this is how the Europeans were always um represented. Notice the what do they call these tassels? Not tassels, but fringes. Notice the fringes on these people, right? And notice their representation. So, Sir Arthur Keith, we have to kind of go into that, because these people existed. These Tamahu, as one person calls them. These Tamahu existed in ancient times. So, what was their role? What was their role and influence in ancient times? And they were also in Egypt. I mean, Egyptians, when they would capture people, they would capture them, but also incorporate them. Yo, 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 peace. They would capture them, but also incorporate them into society. So it's not like they captured them and wholesale slaughtered them. So one thing that's not really talked about or even thought about is that they began to make up portions of society, especially during the later periods, later dynastic periods, which also could have led to the destabilization and its fall. Um, Now what the Kemites called themselves was the Remech, meaning the men. Remech, and when they talk about Kemet, it would also be the cattle. It's referring to the cattle or the herd, right? Now, statues from the sixth dynasty clearly show that they were melanated people, right? This is not, I don't see how this person here in the middle could really be a representation of the Mediterranean type, right? This is an African person. You understand? This is, a brother. If I saw this brother on the street right now in today's world, he looks like he could just be walking down any old street past the store with some headphones on, bopping his head. I would just look at him funny because he's wearing a dress. All right. Moving on, right? Looking at agriculture. Agriculture is really the foundation of any civilization. Like, for the most part, people are living on what they call subsistence farming, when you're really living to feed yourself, so you don't have the leisure time to theorize about different aspects of life. So what we see in ancient Kemet is the taking off of agriculture, and agriculture to such a level that it was able to feed populations that could not. Hey, could you mute yourself? Are you doing?
Pardon me, sister, could you mute your background? We're doing a live presentation here. I'm sorry, babe. Somebody join me in here.
It must have been by accident or something. It's all good. All right, sister. Thank you. All right. So, Kemet. So that's what led to the development of all of the monuments and the social structure that we see, because people had leisure time to do other things than to farm. You understand? You couldn't just simply farm and then do all the other aspects of civilization that Kemet is known for. So it is the introduction of competent farming techniques, terraced farming in particular, that led to the development of what we know as ancient Egyptian civilization, right? Um, and so this bottom part here is the terraced farming that's found in other areas. And these are all clearly representations of what we think is the farming techniques used. Now then we're gonna look here again at Pharaoh Seneferu, right? This is a pharaoh in the fourth dynasty. And the interesting thing here, the reason why I brought him up is because on his stele, in his information, it talks about him coming back from Nubia with 7,000 prisoners and 200,000 cattle, right? In order for someone to do that, there also had to be high levels of social organization in Nubia. For at this time during the fourth dynasty is after Narmer, it's after Ka, uh It's after Ka. Ka is a pharaoh in the third dynasty, who Hashekamwe and Huni, these are two pharaohs in the third dynasty that was responsible for the development of Egypt's economic and architectural, the beginnings of their economic and architectural practices, right? But what that means is that for Seneferu to go to Nubia and have a campaign down there, there was also a high level of social organization in Nubia as well. So it's just not as well documented, and it's primarily because of writing, right? So by the sixth dynasty, Nubia had become an active area for Egyptian expeditions, indicating that it was strategic, right? Nubia was critical. What this is meaning is that Nubia was critical for the development of ancient Egypt as well. So all along this area here, when people are talking about civilization started along the Nile, it's right here, right? This is what we know as modern day Sudan, right? This is what is known in ancient times as Nubia, this area right here, right? So Nubia acted as a crossroads. It's a lot of trading occurred along the Nubian routes. So this is, and what we're looking here in this region, when we're looking at this, we're looking at cultural continuity. We're looking at African culture, right? Now, for people critique people that, oh, you're not Kemetic, da, da, da. But can we say we're related to the Sudanese people? Because the Sudanese culture, the Nubian culture, was the same culture, a little variations, but the same kind of understanding and spiritual practices. What we're talking about with Naphtha Playa, what we're talking about with Libya, we have in the same cultural practices. We can trace similar cultural motifs from Nubia to West Africa. You know what I'm saying? So what it's really about is the reclamation or doing the Sankofa to African trains of thought, African ways of being, African modes of existence. And then people are saying, well, what's the point of that? The point, when you look at how Africans developed their civilization, it wasn't through turn the other cheek. When you read, like, let's look at what Seneferu this saying. Pharaoh Seneferu, right? Pharaoh Senefru went and conducted a military campaign and came back with 7,000 prisoners. That's not turn the other cheek. That is how the way you develop a nation is you have to take heads. When you look at Kashekum, Kashekum fought Kashekum fought people in northern Egypt that were rebelling against the crown. So you have to take, you have to be able to establish yourself as a people that is about the development of self and nation. Go ahead, brother God energy. You're on mute if you're trying to talk.
Oh, brother, I didn't know you had paused for me. I appreciate that. Pharaoh Senefru, where it says right there, his dates are from 2,680 to 2,258 BCE, right?
Yeah.
Is that a date range for his existence, meaning he existed between that date range? Because
That's the date range for
that
the
date
fourth
range has a
dynasty.
difference of 400 years.
That's the date range for the fourth dynasty.
Oh, okay, for the fourth dynasty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
not as like
reason why I brought that up is I wanted to add when you brought up the level of societal sophistication in Nubia, right in between that date range, you have Kerma being established as the capital of what would become the Kushite Empire, right at around 2,500 BCE. So I was excited to hear you say that it would infer that there was high level of societal organization in Nubia, because that is right around the time we see the emergence of the first Kushite capital, Kerma, right? I believe right below the first cataract.
right. I need to do a presentation on karma as well. Because that is where a lot of us are fall the Pan-Africanists fall short is we're not focused on Kerma, or we don't focus on as other ancient African civilizations. Yeah. Muada Ashby's daughter, she got her doctorate in Nubian studies.
European studies.
Yeah, so that's pretty dope. Yeah, I got her dissertation.
The first presentation that I've ever done to the public was about Kush and Nubia. Herma the Pots of Moreau. I go through all of those. Actually, I need to send you a copy of that video and see if you feel like it would be, presentable to the public. I want to get your opinion on that before I put it out to the public.
All right, no problem, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
All right. Yeah, that sounds dope. You know what's dope, man? It's like, uh, yeah, okay, no problem, brother, no problem. All right, so the early Egyptians were Africans that migrated here. People say likely from Uganda and Punt, and but it's definitely a cosmopolitan, metropolitan situation, right? So these are name. This is evidence of Egyptian writing. People get confused and think that the pyramid text is the emergence of the Egyptian writing. That's not true. We have evidence of Egyptians having writing as early as 3600 BCE with these name tags. And if you know how to read Egyptian name tags, you would know here this is a precursor to the symbol of the Ak. Either the Ak, yeah, so what's known as the Ak inside the hieroglyphic writings. So we can see the evolution of Medu Neter uh, divorced from or separate from Mesopotamian writing, right? People like to make this discussion like writing happened in Mesopotamia and traveled to Egypt, but we see Egyptian symbols, pre-dynastic Egyptian symbols occurring in Egypt, divorced from, devoid of, without any similarity to Mesopotamians, right? Here is first.
Before you move on, part of my intrusion, brother, and I'm gonna let you go. Yes, that slide right there. It is those inscriptions right there that John Darnell of Yale University linked to the inscriptions of Scorpion, and he theorized that these inscriptions right here could be indicating lands that were under his jurisdiction or conquest. Dr. John Darnell of Yale University.
Okay. Appreciation, fam.
No problem.
All right. So this is an inscription from the tomb of Ka'ah. He was one of the first dynasty pharaohs. And so we clearly this if you know Kemetic writing, you know this is the letter N right here. This is the letter N. This is a precursor to the lion per se. This is the letter B here in Q. So we see you can clear, and this seems to be the warbird, the WR, the warbird, which means great. So we can see the development, like already the Egyptian writing in the first dynasty is already developed. So it's not it like I don't understand well, I do understand, but people this conversation that Mesopotamia brought writing into Kemet, Mesopotamia had its own writing system that it developed. You understand? Kemet had its own writing system that it developed as well. Let me see here. All right. This is from the tomb of Merkah, right? It's kind of a biographical sketch of his service to the king. And this is first dynasty. We already see the presence of the Ankh. We already see that here. This is Depet. This means boat. This is a determinative that means boat. This is the symbol for Shechem. This is power. This is the T, the bread loaf. This is the S. This is the Al. We already see the precursors to what we know of as Middle Egyptian in these writings here, right? Then here is King Din's sandal, in which we already see, followed by Narmer's palette. So we can see writing already in Egypt and writing in its own Egyptian format, right? So moving on. So that I'm gonna stop right there. There's a few more slides. I'm gonna stop right here because I've already have another presentation um on this channel. I'm gonna put this up later today. It is well, I'll play it right now since everybody's so let me stop this share. I'm gonna play this right now. Something that I put together. Hold up. Boom, boom, boom. All right, let me share again. So this is something I put together yesterday that goes into more depth and detail about the first dynasty.
In 3100 BCE, Kemet became the world's first nation state. Before this, identity was tied to family, village, or region. The unification of Upper and Lower Kemet brought a new political reality, a vast land united under a single ruler shaping a shared Kemetic identity that would endure for a millennia. The unification of Kemet was not simple. Early rulers like Narmer faced the challenge of governing a vast and diverse population. The consolidation of power required diplomacy, military strength, and religious legitimacy. Over time, the concept of divine kingship emerged, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as both ruler and god on earth. Kemetic history was not measured in years, but dynasties. The priest Manetho, writing during the Ptolemaic period, categorized Kemetic rulers into 30 dynasties, starting with Narmer. Later historians added a 31st dynasty for the Persians. Even under foreign dominion, the Kemetic belief in dynastic kingship remained unbroken. Pharaonic rule was deeply rooted in mythology. African kings were seen as direct descendants of the creator god Atum, ruling by divine right. This sacred status legitimized their power, yet Kemet was not immune to political fractures. Periods of turmoil and competing dynasties tested the strength of divine kingship. Unlike Mesopotamia, where the priesthood initially held the highest authority, Kemet embraced kingship from its earliest days. While Mesopotamian rulers emerged from religious elites over time, Egyptian pharaohs ruled from prehistory, merging political and divine authority into a single, enduring institution. The earliest depictions of kingship appear long before the first dynasty. A pottery beaker from the 3800 BCE in Abydos shows a figure crowned with a feathered headdress, wielding a mace and standing over captives, symbols of absolute rule. Similar imagery has been found in Nekhen and Nubt, foreshadowing Egypt's future rulers. By 3500 BCE, the role of the king was visually established. The painted tomb at Nekhen depicts a ruler performing sacred rituals and leading troops into battle. Later, the Narmer palette reinforced this motif, showing the king striking down his enemies, a symbol that would define Kemetic rule for thousands of years. The unification of Kemet was more than a political event. It was the birth of an idea. The African pharaoh was not just a ruler, but the living embodiment of divine order. This belief in kingship defined Egypt, shaping a civilization whose legacy continues to inspire the world today. As Kemetic kingship evolved, so did the way rulers were depicted in art. In the earliest periods, Egyptian kings were shown as mighty animals, lions, scorpions, or catfish, symbols of raw power and divine authority. These images reinforced the idea that the king possessed superhuman strength, ruling by divine right over both people and nature. The Narmer palette marks a turning point in the royal artistic expression. Earlier palettes, such as the battlefield palette, portrayed rulers as animals dominating their enemies. By Narmer's time, kings appeared in human form, reflecting a shift in ideology, one that emphasized royal presence as both warrior and a divine figure. Power was more than an idea. It was something to be seen and held. As early as 4400 BC, the wooden staffs symbolized authority. In time, these evolved into the crook and the flail, representing the king's duty to guide and discipline his people. Pharaohs also adopted the bull's tail, a relic of pre-dynastic tradition, linking their rule to the untamed strength of the wild bull. These symbols reinforced the king's divine power, ensuring his legitimacy through both tradition and might. Among the most enduring symbols of Kemetic rule were the crowns of kingship. The white crown represented Upper Egypt, while the red crown signified Lower Egypt. Though both crowns likely originated in Upper Egypt, they were later reinterpreted to embody the unity of the two lands. With the dawn of the First Dynasty, a new symbol emerged, the double crown, fusing red and white into a single headdress. This was more than mere decoration. It was a declaration of Kemet's unity under the pharaoh's rule. Monumental architecture became another tool of kingship. From the earliest periods, rulers used grand buildings to display their power. The capital city of Memphis housed the White Wall, a massive royal palace that stood as a testament to the king's strength and authority. Just as modern governments construct imposing buildings to project stability and power, ancient Kemetic rulers used architecture to define their divine rule over the land.
King Din's reign marked a turning point in Kemet's political evolution. His innovations reshaped royal burial traditions, introducing entrance stairways that led to larger, more elaborate funerary monuments. Under his rule, the government prioritized elite interests, enacting major administrative and territorial changes that consolidated royal authority.
Records from the Palermo stone suggest that King Din restructured Egypt's agricultural landscape. Land in the delta was reorganized to create royal estates. Large areas of land of Lower Kemet were designated as crown land, strengthening the African king's direct economic control. A new system divided Kemet into 42 provinces or nomes, each ruled by an ancient Egyptian nomarch appointed by the ancient Egyptian king. While Upper Egyptian provinces follow historical traditions, the Delta provinces were shaped around ancient royal entrants, reinforcing centralized power. The rise of high-ranking officials with lavish state-funded burials reveals an expanding bureaucracy. North Saqqara became the primary burial ground for Memphis's elite. Massive mastaba tombs reflected their power and close ties to the monarchy. These tombs, built in the palace facade style, reinforced the ancient African officials' allegiance to the central government. Writing became essential to governance. King Din's chancellor, Hemka, was buried with the earliest known papyrus scrolls symbolizing the growing link between literacy and power. Other officials like Merka held multiple administrative, courtly, and religious roles, illustrating loosely structured but highly influential bureaucracy. Advancement was not based on rank alone but on proximity to the king. Controlling Egypt's borders was a priority. At Abu or Elephantine Island, the government constructed fortified customs posts at the start of the First Dynasty. This stronghold regulated trade and movement between Kemet and Nubia. However, economic and political concerns often overshadowed local traditions. The placement of this fortress disrupted religious sites, demonstrating the government's willingness to prioritize control over community concerns. Egypt's unity and prosperity came at a cost. Strict government oversight, From its earliest history, Kemet was ruled by an authoritarian system that centralized power in the hands of the pharaoh. This system, once established, would define Egyptian governance for the next 3,000 years. The death of King Ka marked the end of Kemet's first dynasty. Like his predecessor, he was laid to rest in Abydos, continuing the royal bearer tradition. However, his successor, Hetep II, made a significant departure, relocating the royal necropolis to Saqqara near Memphis. This shift signaled a new vision for kingship and governance. Hetep II reign introduced architectural advancements. His tomb at Saqqara included rock-cut galleries and elaborate chambers designed for the afterlife. By positioning his tomb near Memphis, he placed the seat of royal power at the balance of Upper and Lower Kemet, reinforcing the centralization of state. Despite efforts at centralization, Kemet was not at peace. The Palermo stone records unrest during King Neterjer's reign, suggesting that Lower Kemet sought independence from the monarchy. The later return to Abydos for royal burials under Peribsen suggests a political shift as power moved back to the south. The unity established by the first dynasty was now in question. One of Kemet's most unique rulers, Peribsen, broke from tradition by associating himself with the god Seth rather than Peru. This departure from royal convention hinted at deep divisions within the ancient Egyptian land. His decision to build a funerary palace in Abydos reinforced his connection to the early kings, a political move to legitimize his rule in a fractured Egypt. However, his reign reflected an ongoing struggle for unity. Kashekum launched a military campaign to reclaim Lower Egypt. Inscriptions record the slaughter of 47,000 northern enemies, securing his victory. His triumph was immortalized in his name change, Kashekumwe, meaning the two powers have appeared. By merging Seth and Heru, symbols of his titulary, he declared peace between Upper and Lower Egypt, uniting the land under a single ruler once more. With Kemet reunited, Kashekumwe turned to economic revival. A national census focused on agricultural wealth and gold reserves, strengthening government finances. Kemet renewed trade with the Near East, particularly Byblos, where it secured valuable imports, cedarwood for shipbuilding and tin for bronze making. Among Kashekumwe's grave goods were the earliest known bronze artifacts in Kemet, marking a technological milestone. The adoption of bronze technology transformed Kemet's economy and state infrastructure. With an increase in trade income, Kashekumwe launched ambitious construction projects across the kingdom. His reign marked a turning point. He became the most prolific builder in early Kemetic history. Religion remained central to royal power, and temple construction flourished under Kashekumwe. He expanded the sacred complex at Meccan, reinforcing his connection to Egypt's divine traditions. But his greatest achievement lay in Abydos, where he built a vast enclosure that surpassed all previous structures. Kashekumwe's tomb was a fusion of tradition and innovation. Combining elements from the first and second dynasties, it symbolized unity and continuity. But its most striking feature was the use of carefully dressed limestone blocks, an unprecedented innovation that foreshadowed the Great Pyramid's construction in the future. Kashekumwe's influence extended beyond Upper Kemet. Recent excavations suggest he commissioned major construction in Lower Kemet as well. At Saqqara, a vast desert enclosure, Gisir el-Mudir, has been linked to his reign. Measuring nearly half a mile long, it is the largest known royal monument of its time, underscoring his authority across the two lands. At Saqqara, a monumental transformation took place. The vast enclosure known as Gisir el-Mudir, built during Kashekumwe's reign, was dismantled to provide materials for a greater vision, the Step Pyramid. King Neterket, later known as Djoser, sought to surpass his predecessor, ushering in a new era of architectural innovation. What began as a simple tomb soon became the tallest structure of its time, the Step Pyramid, designed by Djoser's chief official Imhotep. It symbolized the primeval mound of creation. Imhotep's vision transformed royal burials. For the first time, the tomb and its funerary enclosure merged into a single grand monument, a design that would shape Kemet's future. The construction of the Step Pyramid required an unprecedented level of organization. This led to a structured government with the position of vizier, chief minister, reporting directly to the king. A new class of officials emerged. Ankh and Sepa oversaw districts. The Aqua controlled the royal bark. The Hesara managed the royal scribes. And the Kabu Sokar directed state workshops. The era of hereditary office holders gave way to men of talent. Metjin, once a mere storehouse clerk, climbed the ranks to become governor of several provinces. His inscription is the earliest known autobiography, marking a shift towards recognizing individual contributions in history, a defining feature of Kemet's evolving society. Djoser's successors struggled to match his legacy. Kings like Kaba and Senekatet left behind their reigns largely obscure. However, one ruler, King Huni, introduced a new approach to royal construction, one that redefined the role of the pyramid. Instead of one grand monument, Huni built small step pyramids across Kemet's provinces. These pyramids reinforced royal authority in distant regions, serving as administrative hubs for tax collection. Strategically placed, they marked growing centralization. By the end of the Third Dynasty, the pharaoh's authority was absolute. With a structured bureaucracy, controlled provinces, and monumental architecture, Kemet stood united under the king's rule. This set the stage for the Fourth Dynasty, where King Seneferu and his successors would embark on an even greater architectural feat, the construction of the Great Pyramid.
That's kind of blunt, but yeah, that's it on that level. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. I'm gonna keep the Bigo open, but I'm